All right, it's the time to begin our class. Little nervous because I'm used to teaching the teenagers, so this is my first time. Well, I think I did one time a few years back. I did the adult class, but anyway, I'm going to do the best I can. If you start misbehaving and I say something, just look over me, because I'm used to doing that to the teenagers. But I chose, did everybody get a handout? I chose the book of James. I like those epistles that James wrote. He's been referred to as kind of a common sense Christian writer. He hits a lot of topics in a short amount of time. He's only got 5 epistles in his book. So I chose him because of his relationship. So the one thing I like to do is cover a little bit of history. And I know, like, identifying the writer and different things about him. And I know the authenticity of the writer doesn't change the fact that the word is from God. I also like to know who he was specifically writing to. It helps me in the studies as you go through the scriptures. So we're going to cover a little bit of that this morning before we dig into the first letter. I got 3 books from Robbie, and I went through all of them when I was researching, but I used the one by J.J. Turner, and I believe his name's Dan Winkler, the most out of the 3 to research the history and different things like that. But we're going to get into that first. And so the time and place it was written was between AD 44 and AD 64. And most likely the area it was written in was Jerusalem. So we're going to start now on trying to figure out who the author is. We pretty much know who the author is, but I want to see how we come to that decision. In the New Testament, they were only 4 Jameses mentioned in the New Testament. And the first 2 that was mentioned was in Luke 6:16 and Mark 15:40, and those 2 were not popular. They wasn't mentioned. As far as I know, that was the only place they were mentioned, was in those 2 books. So that being said, I would eliminate those 2 right off. Now the third one that I researched out was James the Apostle, who was the son of Zebedee and the brother of John. And I eliminated him because he died a martyr's death. If you remember, I believe, it was in Acts 12, 1 and 2. I believe he was killed by the sword. And he was killed before AD 44. So that only leaves one more James left that's in the New Testament. Who was that last James we have in the New Testament? That last James is, do what? The brother of Jesus. He is actually the half-brother of Jesus. Okay? Because, we know how that went. But he was the half-brother. So if we go to Matthew 13, let's go to Matthew 13, 55 and 56. Now I'm going to be reading now the New King James Version. When I find it. So Matthew 13, 55 and 56. 55, is this not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? And is his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? And his sisters, are they not all with us? Where then did this man get all these things? So if you add those up, and sisters is plural. So being plural, there's at least 2 sisters. Could be more, but that's 9 people, counting mom and dad. 9 people living in this little house in Nazareth. So, and if we look, when things are listed and how it's listed today, I know when we list our brothers and sisters or anything like that, it's usually like in my family, Kenneth Jr., my sister's name's Angeline, and Jury. There's 4 of us. So they start with the oldest sibling first. So if we think James is usually the first one mentioned, so I would think James was pretty close in age to Jesus. So if we put our mind in what we're on learning some of this history, put our mind in James's position, having a brother that's Jesus. Now and we got to keep in mind, Jesus was a non-believer James was a non-believer at this time. He didn't have the faith. He had a brother, Jesus, but he never had a clue. So 9 of them's living there. But I think as we look at this, James had a unique advantage point by having Jesus as his half brother. And as we think about it, imagine being your half brother, even if he's 2 or 3 years older than you, he's still your brother. That's all you know. So there's his brother. And so, and James not believing, they just lived a normal life just like we're doing today, except under a lot harder times, of course. But they're still trying to survive. Normal family. Then all of a sudden they seemed to be a little congeniality that was in the family circle. And even when in John 2:12, when Jesus left home to start to preach, reports started filtering back that Jesus was proclaiming to be the Son of God. What? Now, if you're James, keep thinking that way. If you're thinking, what in the world? Is my brother gone crazy? And he's also claiming that he can perform miracles. So right off, I would think, trying to feel like I'm in his place, that, man, what is the people around me? What is all my friends? What's everybody going to say? He's lost his mind. So then to make that matter worse, Jesus comes back to Nazareth, okay, where James and the rest of them are still living. He comes back, and he claimed to be the Messiah. We're going to read some of that again, but in the same place, Matthew 13, let's look at 54 and 58, or 54 through 58. Well, I'll leave some of that off where he named off. Let's look at 56, and his sisters, are they not all with us? Where then did the man get all these things? In 57, so they were offended at him. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own country and in his own home. Now he did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. So, and in John 7:5, we can read similar to that also. So he comes home, he does that, and there was more that the research I did that I could put out there, but and the fact was that, the family didn't believe in him, and it was more like an embarrassment. Yes. I thought the same.
Family, you know, it's like
I know.
maybe they didn't because I don't know. They had to find out for themselves, I guess.
Yeah, when I was researching it, Mark, I thought Mary knew. Undoubtedly she did not say nothing to the rest of the kids, because nowhere did I find in these three scholars' books that it mentioned that Mary or Joseph said anything to them.
To Mark, I'd say there's a chance that Joseph was already dead. A lot of scholars say at some point he died, because, particularly at the time of the cross, John taking his mother. But it was just in recent years, no more than 5 years ago, that I realized what I brought up last month, that the jealousy was so much. You got to go all the way back to Joseph. Look at Joseph's brothers.
Yeah.
Who does this guy think he is?
I know.
And that's the way these brothers were.
Yep.
Just like it was in Joseph.
Yep.
But it was so bad that when they knew Jesus was going to be killed in Jerusalem, they said, why don't you go down to Jerusalem and do this? Boy, that's kind of hateful, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Want to get him out of sight, out of mind, I believe. Yeah, I don't have that answer. I couldn't understand it either, but one day maybe we'll know. And then going to a point that Eric did make a couple of weeks ago in his lesson was about in John 19:20, chapter 19, verse 26, where he didn't call on the next to the oldest, which you would think you normally would. But Jesus, when he hung on the cross, he didn't call on James, take care of your mother. So can you imagine what a sad day that even Jesus, I think it was even sad to him that he couldn't call on his own brother. But he did call on brethren, but not his physical brother. But after that, that's when something happened. That's when something dramatic happened with James. Because if we read when Paul listed the 500 in the appearance of the resurrection. He mentioned the 500 that seen Jesus. And 1 Corinthians 15:7, he says, after that he was seen by James. Then from that point on is when we start seeing how James's faith grew. I mean, it was remarkable. His faith grew. And I found one place in there, it was even said that James's knees was likened to the knees of a camel. There was so much callus on his knees from kneeling in prayer that it looked like camel's knees. So he really, from that point on, I guess, when your brother's dead and he had never believed in anything he had done to that point, then all of a sudden, he is the Son of God. And so James really increased in the faith, and even Paul even referred to him in Galatians chapter 2:9 as one of the pillars of the church at Jerusalem. But ultimately, the leaders at that time, they come to James. They wanted him to deny that Jesus Christ was the Messiah. But James didn't do it. He wouldn't deny him at that point. He had in the past, but not at that point. At that point, James spoke up boldly and loudly and confessed the faith that he had never had in his brother before. But James ultimately, they convicted him as a lawbreaker, I think, and that they use that as a common thing. As if you can't come up with something else, we call him a lawbreaker, and you get punished. And so they threw him from the temple, and then stoned him. It didn't kill him after they threw him from the temple, but then they stoned him, and then they finished him off beating him with a club. And in not all of them, but in one of the books I checked, it said he died with a prayer to forgive those that was killing him. So I thought that was interesting. If we get a little information on the history of what was going on and get our mind set, that we can read these letters, these epistles, with a little more understanding. Any questions or thoughts? If not, we'll continue on. We'll begin with James. Let me get there. Chapter 1, verse 1. So it starts out, James, a bondservant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greetings. So we cannot figure out who James is by that opening remark. I wondered why he didn't say James, the half-brother of Jesus, or something of that effect. I'm not sure, unless it was maybe that he did not want to even draw the attention to him because the focus needed to be on our Savior and God. So maybe that could be the reason. A bondservant, when I looked up the definition of a bondservant, a person bound in service without wages. What are we? We're bondservants. We don't ask for wages. We do it voluntarily. So we're bondservants. Then the second part of that, to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. What do you think? Were they Christian Jews, or was they non-Christian Jews? I believe all the Jews. I think from my research, from these writers, James, I believe, was speaking strictly to Christian Jews, because he says 15 times he refers to the readers that was writing his letter as brethren. And the brethren he was speaking to was brothers of the faith. So from what I read and researched, they feel that this letter, these epistles, was meant to the Christian Jews. And because it's common sense letters, because they were under persecution all the time. And he was trying to teach them, even when we start down here in verses 2, 3, and 4, the joys of trial. He's teaching those Christian Jews how to handle these trials that's coming at them every day. So I think it is, it's not written anywhere, but that's my...
I got just a little piece of evidence to go along with what you're saying.
Okay.
Peter kind of wore his heart on his sleeve, and whatever seemed to be the right thing at the time, that's what he did.
Right.
And he was eating with the Gentiles, and everything was great. And Paul was stood into the face because he said when those from James came up there, that Peter withdrew himself and
Right.
no longer ate with the Gentiles. And so, not James himself, but just people who were part of James' people,
Right.
when they came to Antioch, Peter says, I better not be seen eating with these Gentiles. So that indicates that at that time, Paul was minister of the Gentiles, and Barnabas was, but James stood the Christian Jews.
Yeah.
That's the indication.
Yeah. That's from what I've seen, it was addressed to the Christian Jews.
Jerry, I've just got one thing I'd like to mention before we get on past it, because I'll forget. But here early in verse 2, we're told a couple of things. The end of
Yeah.
Because trials are usually negative in our mind. We know we're gonna have them, so when we have them, here are these positives, and I think the start of the book here sets that for us really well, so that we can maybe look at trials in a little different light than our human nature would like to do.
Exactly.
I wanted to mention that before we got too far past verse 2.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, the trials, we don't go looking in life. I don't see anyone looking for trials and troubles, but it comes. I mean, it's going to come. So I'm like Vance. I do believe the book of James will teach us how to deal with those trials that come up. Looking at, we'll go to the next one, the joys of trial. What can we find in the joys of trial? When I first read that years and years ago, I thought, well, boy, how can you be happy when you got trouble hitting you in the face? That's a little tough. But it gives us a chance to be tested. And when we're tested, each time we're tested, and if we keep the faith and we do what God tells us to do, then we become stronger. Each time we'll get better and better and better. And at verse 3, it produces patience. What's another word for patience? I looked kind of what the Greek, I should have wrote the Greek word down, but I couldn't pronounce it, so they wouldn't know use writing it down. Endurance. Yeah.
God is long-suffering to us, and that means he's patient with us, so we got to be long-suffering with trials.
Yeah. And patience, you know, I've always said, I don't think I'd ever pray for patience, because how do you get patience? By trials. So it's coming, you know. That's right. Yeah, that's true. But you know, I know these trials are going to come, and it's going to come in our congregation. It's going to come with us individual. It's going to come in our home life. And it's basically not the trial that's coming. What we need to do is know how to handle it when it comes, the right steps to take. First of all, we need to be a Christian. We have went through trials here at the congregation. But when we go through them, we have to do what God expects us to do in order to handle those trials correctly. And then at the end of it, in verse 4, it says, "But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." So that's a victory. In 4, a victory if we pass the test. Because if we get the more trials that we have, the stronger we're going to get. I mean, it's just like the military. A lot of you guys have been in the military. I've not. But in the military, do they hate you because you're going through boot camp? Do those guys that's training you despise you to put you through the things? No, he don't despise you. He's trying to make you to where you'll be able to live. You can survive what's coming. He's going to make you stronger. Sports coach, you practice. All he's doing is trying to make you stronger. These trials, all it's doing is putting us through these tests to make us stronger. So, and we can't confuse the trials. We sometimes, you know, and it's going to come up in here where people blame God for things that happen. We can't confuse that with these trials. We have these trials. God don't come in and stop them for us because he wants us stronger in the faith. He wants us to get stronger and stronger and stronger. So he's not going to stop them. But as we learn on down here, God does not tempt us of anything. So I'll wait till we get to that point. I'm already out of time. I thought, you know, and the thing about it is I was worried to death I didn't have enough material.
Bobby admitted it to me, so I was looking today, and he took 10 minutes of time.
Well, you know, I noticed that. He's got my back. He's been good about that. Did he?
Trials, during that, God wants us to seek Him, to ask Him, to trust Him in that.
That-
That's the way that He wants us to come to Him for help through those trials and become able to trust Him. You know, that's where
That's exactly right. He is our main source for wisdom, to go to Him for wisdom. And but there's certain ways we'll learn as we go. There's ways that we go about it in asking God for that wisdom. But we'll talk about that next week. And I actually don't think I was too nervous, but I appreciate you guys for taking it easy on me.